in Miami now.
I am, yeah, but honestly getting cold here too. I mean, it was really cold in New York.
Yeah, yeah. It was like
Um,
freezing at night.
yeah. I mean, here it's like 70s, but definitely way better, but still like kind of cold for Florida standards or Miami standards. But
Yep.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. Well, today I wanted to do like a card session.
Cars, okay.
So I wanted to go over one of, well, it was probably the AMC passage I had the greatest difficulty with
Okay.
from the first blank, FL1. So
Yep.
it's this passage.
Okay. So tell me how you go about this.
Um, Usually I first scan quickly through the passage. Um, I tried reading this book actually. I mean, I didn't try. I read the whole book, but only once. I don't know where it is. But it was like a speed reading book
Uh-huh.
that I was recommended. But anyways, one of the main things was like if you want to speed read something, which I'm not trying to speed read here, but it's like reading things a little quicker. Like you scan through the text first just to like kind of have an idea, so to speak,
So
of
the thing about speed reading is because it's something um that I can do that I learned like when I was a teenager is that there's reading. So when people read, they read out loud in their head.
yep.
And that's called sub-vocalization.
Yeah, that was my
Theoretically, the fastest you can read at if you sub-vocalize would be like around 250 words per minute. But if you do something to make it so that you don't sub-vocalize, so an example would be so the thing is like, you can't say two things out loud, whether it's actually out loud or out loud in your head at once. So when I learned speed reading, it was I would just say in my head something, like I would repeat something I would sub-vocalize in my head something else so that when I read, I don't get a chance to sub-vocalize and it would force me to use my eyes to read. So I would say, for instance, in my head, A-E-I-O-U, A-E-I-O-U. It doesn't matter what you say, but as long as you say something, it bypasses the uh sub-vocalization aspect of it. Now, there's been since when I was whatever a teenager learning this, there's been something called, have you ever heard of Sweeter?
no.
So the idea is that same concept, but if you have it if you have the words displayed faster, then you could sub-vocalize. It takes that sub-vocalization away like automatically.
Mhm.
So trying to find something that I made about this. Um, uh, okay, go to this link here and like share your screen. So this is something I made like a few years ago, but you get to yeah, type in like the words per minute there, and then you can also copy and paste whatever you want to read in this over here. And so, yeah. So why don't you try it out? And so, oh, and then see over here in the middle, word, right?
Yeah.
That's where the text will be displayed really, really quickly. So yeah, you can give it a try. How's this? You could stop it. So seeing it like that, what do you think about that?
It's good.
Do you like are you able to like kind of like process and see the words and kind of get the meaning of it?
I think so, yeah.
hmm So yeah, you can adjust the speed as well. But this is a kind of like a shortcut. So like instead of like doing what I did like many, many years ago, which is like saying something in my head to make it so that I don't sub-vocalize, this will show you things at such a speed that you don't get a chance to sub-vocalize.
Hmm.
So type in like how about like for the words per minute, type in like maybe 1,000. So so
Too
we're
fast.
catch that.
It's a little tad too fast.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. But you see like what I mean about if it's shown to you so fast that you don't get a chance to sub vocalize and you get
Yeah.
kind of force yourself to read with your eyes.
Hmm.
So, yeah, so that could be useful. Now, the thing is about cars is so when I read cars, I actually do sub vocalize because it's well, it requires a close reading. So, speed reading and stuff like that, I would not do for cars. I would read it slowly and I would sub vocalize. Um, but yeah, I would say it's better not to do a scan like that. It's better to so yeah, we're gonna do it together here. But so yeah, you know from the Jack Weston course that you're focused on arguments, right?
Hmm.
And that's what you look for. So every sentence could either be a new idea, same idea with some type of support, right? And, uh, essentially, so yeah, continue with what you're saying about how you approach this. So like you said, you scan it first and then what?
And then just start reading. Uh, and after every paragraph, I try to get a gist of what's going on and write it down.
So when you say
Um, like
yes,
4 words to describe the paragraph, just in case I need to look back
yeah.
at my map and remember what the paragraph was about.
Okay. So yeah, just remember that it's all about argument. So yeah,
Yeah.
so read out loud slowly, but tell me either after each sentence or like a lot of times you'll have long sentences. So like the first third of the sentence, second third, etc. Tell me what they're saying, put it in your own words, and remember, you're looking for arguments, who's making the argument, and what support, if any, is given to the argument. Okay?
Okay. Yeah. The practical ideal of democracy consists in self-government of the masses in conformity with the decisions of popular assemblies.
Okay. What's that saying?
Um, Democracy is basically it's like the masses are conforming to what um like the assemblies decide. Like those who make decisions, decision makers.
So okay, so this is first sentence, so it must be a new idea, right?
Yeah.
And so what it says is that the ideal democracy, right?
Hmm.
Consists of self-government of the masses in conformity with the decisions of popular assemblies, right?
Okay.
So this is an ideal, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, continue.
But while the system limits the extension of the principle of delegation, it fails to provide any guarantee against the formation of an oligarchical ruling clique.
Okay, any special words?
But contrast word,
Good. So, and then what's it saying?
basically saying that it can lead to like it fails to provide basically like it doesn't do anything against the fact that there could be an oligarch that like ends up taking over.
What is an oligarch?
Just like a I forget if it's like it's like a group a small group of people versus just one person, but they're just like basically they have absolute power.
So why don't we use the fact that,
It's a group, never mind.
how do you know?
Oliga.
Oh,
Oliga.
like a Lego saccharide?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Good, 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 good. So, um, okay, and you can see that the contrast word is in contrast. So saying like that, the thing before the contrast word is saying, okay, it's government of the masses, right? Contrast word and then we're going to see something that means it's different from what's said before. So now,
Mhm.
before it said masses, contrast word, oligarch, ruled by a few, right?
Yeah.
Continue.
Undoubtedly, it deprives the natural leaders of their quality as functionaries. Um, for this quality is transferred to the people themselves.
Okay. Yeah.
So the leaders basically lose their power.
So it says, yeah, undoubtedly it deprives the natural leaders of their quality as functionaries, for this quality is transferred to the people themselves. So seems a little bit different from what they said about the oligarch thing, but that's okay.
Okay. The crowd, however, is always subject to suggestion, being readily influenced by the eloquence of popular orators.
All right, tell me what's going on there.
The crowd can, sometimes be affected
Okay.
um by popular orators, meaning maybe like people with radical ideas. I don't know.
So far we've talked about an oligarch system and government of the masses, right?
Okay.
And so when they're saying undoubtedly it deprives, etc., that's kind of saying like, it, it's going from oligarch to the people themselves, right?
Hmm.
And that's why I was saying, oh, this is a little weird because it's contrary to the previous sentence, right? Because the previous sentence says that it's an oligarch ruling.
Okay.
So when someone says like undoubtedly like that, or kind of like saying like um it's like the author's kind of like conceding a point
Right.
by saying, all right, while it might be true that this oligarchical ruling clique is having their power transferred to the people themselves, the masses, right? Just to say a concession. Then it says the crowd is subject to suggestion, you
Mhm.
know? from popular orators, something perhaps like individual rulers or oligarchical rulers, right?
Okay.
Crowd, subjection, sorry, suggestion, or I'll just say influenced by, I guess like orators.
So the popular orators are like the oligarchies, the people like the oligarchs, or
Seems like it so far, yep.
Mhm.
Because we have rule by a few, rule by many, and it could be that we're depriving the rule by few to the rule by many, but the many can still be influenced by individuals.
Mhm.
Okay.
Um, Moreover, direct government by the people, admitting of no serious discussions or thoughtful deliberations, greatly facilitates sudden insurrections of all kinds by individuals who are exceptionally bold, energetic, and adroit.
Okay.
They are government by the people. Um, I don't know. It leads to creation of some individuals who are like bold.
Okay.
I don't know what insurrection means.
Yeah, you do. Think about
I I just searched it up.
it.
While you said that, not after you told me to think about it.
Sure, sure, sure.
Um,
Uh-huh. So,
yeah.
but um I was gonna ask like what did you like if you think about it, like what do you think it means? Because the whenever I ask students like what does a word mean, like I don't expect them to know the dictionary definition of it, but you undoubtedly have encountered this word before, you know. Probably like the January 6th insurrection, you know what I'm talking about?
Nope.
When during like Biden's inauguration in
Mm.
yeah. So, okay. Um yeah. So, what can we take away from this paragraph?
Um, there like the division between, or kind of the contrast between like self-government and oligarchical ruling. How well honestly maybe oligarch arrow to like people or the self-government.
So,
I just feel my issue right now is I feel like they're just prancing around a couple different ideas. I don't know.
well, it's really one idea, right? And then support in the form of elaboration.
So
So,
I mean, ideal democracy is self-government.
okay, and
Um, but self-government could lead to oligarchy, or that's what I'm confused about. I guess like,
what?
does it lead to oligarchical ruling or?
Yeah, so it seems like the ideal democracy is um government of the masses, and this can lead to an oligarchy, and that the masses can be influenced by that oligarch. And if the oligarch is, special, right? Charismatic or whatever, and that can cause it can lead to insurrection. So I put ideal government, ideal democratic government is by the masses, but it can lead to an oligarch, and the masses can be influenced by like a charismatic oligarch, and that can lead to an insurrection. So it's almost like we have a good example with the January 6th thing because that's when you have the masses who, you know, assembled, um, and they were influenced by a charismatic leader, kind of like Donald Trump,
Hmm.
and that can, yeah, lead to insurrection. Um, so yeah, you definitely want to come out of a paragraph getting an argument down, and here the argument is the first sentence, but or I shouldn't say more importantly, but importantly, what comes after that contrast word, right? Because contrast words are really strong markers of support in terms of what the author likely believes or the author's point.
Hmm.
So we have, ideally democracy ruled by the people, but the thing is the people could be subject to influence by oligarchs, so it could lead to an oligarchy.
Okay.
Okay.
It is easier to dominate a large crowd than a small audience.
All right. Is that a new idea? Same idea?
New.
Okay. Easier to dominate large than small. Okay.
The adhesion of the crowd is tumultuous, summary, and unconditional. Um, like a crowd is just very all over the place.
Well, what about the crowd are they talking about?
Uh, like the togetherness, like they're just, it's like chaotic.
Okay. It says the adhesion of the crowd, right?
Yeah, but what does that mean really? Like just their ability to stick together?
I think it might mean sticking to something like um a charismatic ruler of some sort, because I'm thinking of adhesive versus cohesive properties. Adhesive is when something, sticks to something else.
Hmm.
Cohesive is when it wants to stick to itself.
Hmm.
But that's just what I take so far. And in the context of, it being easier to dominate a large crowd. So I'm seeing everything in that perspective. I'm seeing it in the perspective of if you have a large mass of people, they can be influenced by some charismatic leader. So I see that as less sticking together, more so sticking to some type of leader. Okay.
Once the suggestions have taken effect, the crowd does not readily tolerate contradiction from a small minority, and still less from isolated individuals. Um, so I guess maybe once like the leader like the oligarch has affected the crowd,
When you say affected by the crowd, what do you mean by that?
like the suggestions have taken effect. I don't know, like maybe started enforcing policies. I don't know.
So, give me something, right? When they say the suggestion, like so in the first paragraph they said power of suggestion or subject to suggestion. So what can suggestion mean?
Like mm, some new idea.
Well, sure. Um, but is suggestion like someone saying, "Hey, I suggest you do that," or is it something different here?
Uh, like getting power.
So in here, what do we mean like by that?
I mean, it says being readily influenced by popular orators after,
Yep, yep,
like,
yep.
like the ideas of the oligarchs. I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
So the subject to suggestion is being influenced by, these types of charismatic leaders. So now in paragraph two, when we say once the suggestions have taken effect, once the people have, become enamored to this charismatic, speaker, the crowd starts to, well, not tolerate contradiction, right?
mhm.
So we could say suggestions, not tolerate contradiction, right?
Yeah.
Okay, continue.
A great multitude assembled within a small area is unquestionably more accessible to panic alarms, to unreflective enthusiasm, and the like than is a small meeting whose members can quietly discuss matters among themselves.
All right, what are they saying here?
Um, that like a greater group of people, it's more easily, it can more easily lead to chaos and like panic and yeah, stuff like that. Versus if you're like in a small group, you can discuss matters more respectfully.
So you're saying chaos a lot, but um, but um, when they say a great multitude is unquestionably more accessible to panic alarms, right? What can that mean?
Riots.
Well, it's what's the argument here so far?
Um, the argument in this paragraph for
Yep.
that it's easier to dominate a larger crowd than a small one.
Uh-huh. And so the larger crowd, the great multitude, is going to be more accessible to panic alarms. That would mean like if the leader was like, "Hey, migrants are coming into this country or whatever," you know,
Mhm.
the masses in that case are going to be panicky, right?
Yeah, okay.
Compared to a smaller group of people who will be less subject to that type of alarm or panic, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So what can we put for this paragraph?
Um, easier to dominate larger crowds than small ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
I mean, the greater crowd is like doesn't tolerate contradiction, also panic alarms.
Uh, Tell me more, like in your own words.
Um, a, a greater crowd is more likely to like I mean, I don't know. I would write on my map that larger crowd is just easier to control, easier to dominate than small one.
Okay. So easier to dominate large crowds and small. For example, the suggestions lead to no tolerance for contradiction. Okay.
fact of everyday experience that enormous public meetings commonly carry resolutions by acclamation or by a general assent. While these same assemblies, if divided into small sections, say of 50 persons each, will be much more guarded in their assent.
Okay. What are you saying here?
Um, that like the smaller assemblies would, the smaller assemblies are like, mm, they're more like, I don't even know what guarded assent means, but
So think about it.
their ideas are more like more stagnant.
Hmm. What can
They're
Mhm. Go on?
maybe they're less likely to be influenced.
Uh-huh.
They're guarded, right?
Yep. What can assent mean?
Mm. So the issue. The assent maybe means their ability to be influenced by the leader.
Um, Tell me, just think about, I guess perhaps not in this context, but if you just break that word apart.
Uh, I don't even know because what it's like scent.
Uh-huh. What other words sound like that?
Hmm? Oh, this descent? No.
There's dissent, good. And that's when what?
Well, descent?
Yeah.
I don't even know. Wait, descent like go down, like descent?
No, no, no. So
Descent with ENT ending, right?
yep.
Um, is that like the uh it's like when you're descending, but it's kind of like the process of descending, like the descent.
I think you're thinking of DESCENT,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
but you know, think about
Oh, descent, right. DISSENT.
yeah.
Um, it's descent, like not listen, I guess.
So what about consent?
Consent, it's to agree to something, like to give your consent.
So let's say there's a lot of dissent. There could be a lot of disagreement,
Yeah.
and assent could mean the opposite. Could
Hmm.
be a lot of agreement,
Right.
right? So you want to be able to like kind of like break words apart to figure out what they mean.
Hmm.
So, um, okay. Now they're saying that the large meetings, right, like are based on general assent, right?
Yeah.
Meaning like a general agreement, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But the smaller ones are more guarded in their assent, right? They're less likely to just say, yeah, I agree, right? And
Okay.
that makes sense because we talked in the earlier paragraph about in the large crowd, it doesn't tolerate contradiction. So if you're in the large crowd and you're dissenting, right? You're disagreeing, that large crowd is going to be like very not tolerant of that. They'll probably kick you out or something, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Great party congresses in which the elite of the membership are present usually act in this way. It's an example, I guess.
Okay.
Words and actions are far less deliberately weighed by the crowd than by the individuals of the little groups of which this crowd is composed.
So what do they sing there?
The crowds, like the words and actions are not as significant compared to like individuals.
So when you say significant just means, if something's having a great effect or not, but
Um, Weight in terms of, I guess, like
what
the
about deliberately weighed? Deliberate or deliberate. What can that mean?
like to talk about something, argue about something.
Okay, good. And so there's less deliberation for the large crowd, right?
Right.
Compared to the little group.
hmm
So tell me like the implications of that.
Um, there's less deliberation in the little groups,
Um, it says
like more deliberation,
more or less for the small group.
more.
Okay. So that means that they are going to be more likely to talk amongst themselves to be like, hey, let's look at this carefully before we agree to it,
hmm
right? Okay, continue.
The fact is incontestable, a manifestation of the pathology of the crowd.
Okay.
Um, okay, saying that it's like can't argue about this.
Okay. What about pathology?
Pathology,
Yep.
just the way the crowd is, I guess.
Well, you could say that about anything.
Um,
Give me more.
Pathology, I usually hear in like different.
Like
Uh,
don't be afraid of being wrong. Just tell me like
Pathology is like a virus. It's like
this is a good thing,
it's not.
not a good thing. Good. So that there's a pathology of a crowd. When a crowd gets together, there's problems.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
Continue.
The individual disappears in the multitude, and therewith disappears also personality and sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
There's a the individual like um is not it disappears in like the big crowd, and along with the individual disappears his or hers personality and sense of responsibility.
Yep.
So yeah,
Okay. what can we say for this paragraph?
Um, so individual, it's kind of like de-individualization, but like individual like disappears in big crowd. Um, and also will also smaller groups, more deliberation, smaller groups, more arguing.
Okay. So small in parentheses 50 like or so are more guarded in their ascent. I wrote asset.
Hmm.
Um, more deliberation. There's a pathology of the crowd in which the individual disappears along with their personality and sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay. So so far, right? Because our main idea would be an argument in more than one paragraph. So far, what do you think? It could change obviously, but what do you think the main idea would be so far? Or what argument is repeated?
Like it's easier. Well, basically smaller crowd. Um, Smaller crowd is harder to dominate. Larger crowd is easier to dominate. Smaller crowd is more like guarded.
Okay. Um, domination by,
I guess oligarch.
yeah, some type of like bold, charismatic leader. Okay. Continue.
The most formidable argument against the sovereignty of the masses is, however, derived from the mechanical and technical impossibility of its realization.
All right.
Um, so now I guess it's kind of the author's going against their argument from like the beginning,
Okay.
how masses is like sovereignty of the masses is ideal, but the argument against that is, I mean, that's just like crazy. I don't even know what that means. Mechanical and technical possibility of its realization.
Okay.
Um, that's like the strongest argument against that.
Uh-huh. So, what does sovereignty of the masses mean?
Like freedom of the masses, I guess. Like sovereign rule, like d democracy, the like self-government, yeah.
Sorry, so you said what was sovereignty of the masses?
Self-government of the masses.
Um, okay. So, yeah. So sovereignty means like rule. So sovereignty of the masses could be like rule of the masses.
Okay.
And there's a very good argument against that. And it, it- the argument against that would be that it's mechanically and technically impossible to have like true sovereignty of the masses, right?
Okay.
Okay.
It's impossible to have sovereignty of the masses. Sovereignty masses are incapable of undertaking the most necessary resolutions.
Okay.
Um, Sovereign masses. So they can't really find like answers to their problems.
So And it's just so like okay. So it's saying the sovereign masses are incapable of undertaking the most necessary resolutions. What do you think that means? Like what when they say resolution, what do you think they mean?
Like resolving a conflict.
Okay. So it could also just be like, like let's say there's some law or something that people want to pass, that could be the resolution, right?
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay. The opponents of direct democracy, like the power of indirect democracy, is a direct outcome of the influence of number.
Okay. What's that saying?
Uh, the inability for direct democracy to work happens because of number.
Okay. The impotence. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, the number of people can affect it.
The impotence of direct democracy, like the power of indirect democracy, is a direct outcome of the influence of number, right? So what can we put here?
Um, so sovereign masses can't no resolutions, and also number like arrow to like number leads to impotence of direct democracy.
Okay. So, but argument against rule by masses is mechanical slash technical impossibility due to number, due to influence of number, which I take to mean, well, what do you take that to mean?
Um, like the amount of people like the in the crowd or in the group.
What about that? What about it?
If it's like small, then or I mean, if it's big, then like it's hard for the masses to rule.
Okay. So you're saying that a good argument against rule by the masses is that it's mechanically and technically impossible, and the impotence of this direct democracy, like indirect democracy, is a direct outcome of the influence of number. So what I'm thinking of is, well, what's a direct democracy?
Direct democracy, like when there's a ruler and he directly rules,
In a direct democracy?
I guess. I mean, I forget honestly.
So what's a regular democracy?
Um, bunch of people vote on stuff.
Okay. So it's how is it predominantly different from other types of government?
It's like people have a bunch of people vote.
Okay. Now, let's say that you wanted to pass some resolution, some, law of some sort. You would have to ask everyone what they think, or to get the, you would have to have everyone either vote on something or, talk about being against or for something, right?
Yeah.
And that could be pretty difficult to do.
Hmm.
Like a direct democracy is like, well, without going into like outside knowledge or anything like that, um, a direct democracy is like, well, what we have is in a country isn't a direct democracy. It's more like a republic where we elect leaders like senators and congressmen um, to vote on things to represent our best interests. But it's not like for every single bill, people do a vote of every person in this country.
Hmm.
Because that would be like logistically pretty difficult to be like
Yeah.
everyone in this country, like, get everyone's opinion, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, so this sovereignty of the masses, the rule by masses, aka, democracy, um, a good argument against it is just that it's mechanically and technically impossible to ask literally everyone, hey, what do you think? Do you think this is good or bad? Like, do you want this bill to pass or not pass?
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, it's obvious that a gigantic number of persons belonging to a unitary organization cannot do any practical work using a system of direct discussion.
You're saying here.
It's like basically that a lot of people, it's hard for them to directly talk to each other.
So say
Like
sorry.
they can't really like produce anything valuable when it's a big group of people.
Yeah, they particularly can't do things if the system is of a direct discussion.
Yeah.
You can't have like every 320 million people in the country come together and be like, hey, now let's, you know, talk about something,
Mhm.
right? Okay.
The regular holding of deliberative assemblies of 1,000 members encounters the gravest difficulties in respect to room and distance.
Okay. What's this saying?
When you have like a bunch of people deliberating, it's a lot of difficulty in terms of like the amount, like just the room,
When you say that, what do you mean? The room?
because people, the amount of people
Huh?
take up a lot of room.
Yeah.
Uh,
And they're also going to be far from each other, right? So there'll
yeah.
be an elaboration on, the prior argument of mechanical or technical impossibility.
Mhm.
Okay.
From a topographical point of view, such an assembly would become altogether impossible if the members numbered 10,000.
Okay.
Okay, just be impossible if it was 10,000 people.
Okay.
Even if we imagine the means of communication to become much better than those that now exist, how would it be possible to assemble such a multitude in a given place at a stated time and with the frequency demanded by the exigencies of political life?
Okay. What are you saying?
Um, just it's really hard to have that many people communicate,
Yeah.
even if yeah.
Yeah. Even if the technology became so much better that, you can get everyone in a Zoom room together, right? It would
Mhm.
still be pretty difficult to have everyone come in and, talk about, whether they support something or not just because of the sheer number. So, okay.
In addition, must be considered the physiological impossibility, even for the most powerful orators, of making themselves heard by a crowd of 10,000 persons.
Okay.
So the orators are just harder. It's like I'm visualizing like a person speaking and just like the crowd's just like no one's looking at them. They're all just like arguing and you know all in their own world, and the orators trying to get their attention, but they can't.
Hmm.
So
Well, what so you're saying the reason that the orator can't make themselves heard is because the crowd is arguing amongst themselves?
I mean, I don't know, maybe not arguing, but um they're just like there's just so many people,
Okay.
it's
Uh-huh.
yeah, they're just like not listening, I guess, because that heat of the crowd is tumultuous.
Well, we know that a bigger crowd is easier to dominate, and we know that a smaller crowd are more likely to deliberate. So I would actually say that the smaller crowd would be more likely to perhaps argue amongst themselves, whereas a larger crowd is going to be more influenced by um, a powerful orator.
Oh, true. Okay, well then I have no idea what they're saying here.
So think about it in the context of what this is under. Like what argument, because this is so far in this paragraph, we have a same argument as the previous paragraph, right?
Okay, so I guess they're continuing to talk about against it.
When you say against it, what do you mean against? Like what was the previous argument?
Like against the previous argument. Yeah, that it's easier to dominate a larger crowd.
No, no, no. I mean the immediate previous argument. The one in,
Yeah, that like you can't like have sovereignty of the masses because of the large number.
okay, because of the large number, but like what about that?
Uh,
You look at our map.
it's impossible. It's
Uh-huh.
yeah, mechanically technically impossible.
Okay. So when they say mechanically and technically impossible, what what could they mean by that?
I guess they're referring to like the room
Uh-huh.
distance, stuff like that.
Yeah, right. So we are elaborating on that in this current paragraph, right? Saying that we're elaborating on the mechanical and technical impossibility of this type of direct discussion when you have such a large group of people, so that you can't have. It's mostly the mechanical and technical impossibilities. I'm talking about logistics. So the
Mhm.
logistics of bringing all these people, a huge crowd of like 10,000 people in the same room is logistically very difficult. And then not just bringing them in the same room, but the fact that people are, far from each other also hinders that. And even if we figured out some like a way of communication, which I'm imagining is like, even if we were able to have Zoom and have, the room and the distance part, taken care of, um, it's still going to be hard for the large crowd, to be able to hear the powerful orators.
Yeah.
And that's a physiological impossibility And again, I guess this, this is before things like Zoom, so I guess my example kind of could solve the issue of the orators making themselves heard. But I think if you think about it, in terms of like, I guess the context that they're given, that uh it just logistically pretty much impossible to have a true, you know, direct democracy
Mhm.
because of these logistical issues.
Right.
So yeah, like physiological impossibility of the orators heard by a crowd of 10,000. So we can say for paragraph 5 that um, large groups cannot practically work via direct discussion, logistical issues, room, i.e., room, distance. Oh, and I'm going to put large groups in parentheses like 10K, room distance, and large groups 10K cannot practically work via direct discussion. Logistical issues, for example, room, distance, order being heard. And maybe I'll put like arrow just to mean that we're continuing the argument from paragraph 4.
So the author's going now, like literally the second half is him or her arguing against like the first half.
Arguing against first half? What do you mean?
Like the second half of this article is just kind of like playing devil's advocate.
Well, well, we start off by saying that sure, it's easier to dominate a large crowd, right? In the first 3 paragraphs, I guess. And
Yeah.
then we start to talk about um, the large crowd having logistical issues in being able to, represent this type of direct democracy. So it wouldn't say that we're refuting things that were said in the first 3 paragraphs because we still say that, like, we're not refuting the argument of, larger crowds are more easily to be influenced by leaders. We're just saying that a good argument against rule by the people comes from the logistical challenges,
Okay.
sheer number of people.
Okay.
Mhm.
There are, however, other reasons of a technical and administrative character that render impossible the direct self-government of large groups.
All right, what is this saying?
There's other reasons, I guess, why it might not be possible.
Why, what might not, what be possible?
Direct self-government, large groups.
Okay, so other reasons of a technical and administrative character that make it impossible for, direct self-government of large groups. So it's just saying that there's more reasons and they might elaborate on what those reasons are. So, yep, continue.
If Peter wrongs Paul, it is out of question that all the other citizens should hasten to the spot to undertake a personal examination of the matter in dispute and take the part of Paul against Peter.
All right.
Um, So if Peter wrongs Paul, it would like it's out of question, meaning like um I guess what would probably happen but shouldn't.
Let's see. So Peter wrongs Paul. It is out of the question, meaning it cannot be the case that all other citizens should like hasten to the spotlight to come in and say, hey, let's look into this, dispute and, you know, try to figure out how to resolve this, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like a small individual dispute. And, how can we have all the people that exist or whatever to, you know, really look into this, right? It's not very practical.
Mhm.
Yeah.
By parity of reasoning in the modern democratic state, it is impossible for the collectivity to undertake the direct settlement of all controversies that may arise. Uh, so basically saying that it's impossible for like a big group to undertake settling like any sort of conflict.
Okay. So, what are we saying here?
Uh, Probably like the last sentence.
So, what can we put for this paragraph?
Probably the last sentence.
So, I mean, tell me,
It's impossible for a group to settle like any conflict,
to settle
like a large group.
to settle any conflict, or
All of the conflict that arises, all the controversies that arise.
okay. So we could say error to the above, administrative too, meaning administrative, uh, reasons are also reasons for why large group kind of direct democracy is not something that can work. And we have an example with if Peter wrongs Paul. So that's just like a little tiny kind of dispute between two people. And it's impossible to get everyone to come in and to be like, okay, let's make a decision about how to settle this dispute between two people, right? It's
Mhm.
not practical for a large group of people to collectively figure out like how to deal with this conflict, right? Okay. So now let's take a look at what we wrote in our map. So paragraph one, an ideal democratic government by the masses can lead to an oligarchy in which the masses can be influenced by a charismatic oligarch, and this can lead to insurrection. So we're kind of setting it up here by saying that there could be a drawback with this democracy by the masses in that they could be swayed or influenced by oligarchs. Now, paragraph two says it's easier to dominate large crowd compared to the small crowd, meaning easier for that charismatic oligarch to dominate a large crowd. Um, because they seem to have this greater in-group kind of feeling. Like there's no tolerance for contradiction. If you say something that's against, you know, what the charismatic oligarch says, you're likely, to be kicked out of the group or something. Um, P3, small groups, and I put in orange, 50, just to give us an idea of what they mean by small. So around 50 people are more guarded in their assent. So they're not gonna just right away agree to everything. They're gonna think about it and discuss it. So they're more guarded in their assent and there's more deliberation. And that there's a pathology with of the crowd in which the individual disappears along with personality and responsibility. So that's, continuing on that argument about, larger crowds being easier to dominate.
Hmm.
Then paragraph four, we kind of switch gears a bit and we say that there's additional reasons for or arguments against the rule of masses, in that it's just the number of people involved makes it very, you know, uh, unlikely to be something that can happen, like due to mechanical or technical impossibilities due to the number. And then paragraph five, large groups around 10 gay people cannot practically work via direct discussion. There's lots of logistical issues like being able to fit them all in the same room or dealing with the distance between them and then the order being heard. And then paragraph six, we add another reason why it's hard for practically to have a practical way of having rule of the masses because if they're expected to directly, meaning the group is expected to directly settle all disputes that may arise, like if one person wrongs another, yeah, that's not really possible, right?
The main idea is that it's hard for large groups to get dominated, but also for them to work.
Harder for them to get dominated, or
Easier for them to get dominated and harder for them to work. Right.
so I would say large groups easier to dominate by a charismatic leader, but large direct democracy slash discussion practically and logistically impossible, I would say, due to number.
Hmm.
So why don't you take a screenshot of everything, the highlights and the map?
Okay.
Okay. So now we'll do the questions, and then after the questions, we're going to compare, or maybe we can do this. So, do you happen to have your map for this passage?
Um, yeah, I do.
Okay. Let's compare maps. So,
Now?
um, yeah, let's do it.
So, Okay, so one sec. I am gonna have it in like a minute.
Mhm. Sure.
You have another student at 3?
Oh no, I I did, but they canceled.
Yeah. Do you see it?
Um,
How should we do this?
let me. Okay, so you wrote
Oh, wait.
one.
Okay, yeah, hold on. So
Sure.
I, this mine is on the left.
Yep. So democracy, leaders, no power. Is that what that says?
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of so we wrote that the ideal democracy can involve those leaders that have power
Yeah.
over them, right? You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
you know what? Okay, let's do the questions and then we can uh take another look at this.
All right. Which of the following statements from the passage most strongly indicates that the passage was written prior to the 21st century? Okay. So it's a main idea question. So which statement basically shows that it was written before 21st century?
All right, let's think about this, right?
Okay.
So, what in the passage, what are your thoughts on this?
Um, I mean, maybe it's gonna talk about like a word that's old, or
Oh, what that?
like maybe not a word, but like a form of government structure that's old.
Okay. So, tell me more.
Maybe like an oligarchy, but I don't know. I feel like there's still oligarchies that exist today, so I don't know, honestly.
All right, let's try though. Let's try thinking, right? So, so in our map we have several issues with large groups. Which of those issues could perhaps be solved or become less of an issue, you know, in this 21st century?
Um, like disputes that arise,
The what?
like disputes that arise.
Well, what makes a dispute that arises, uh, like why would there be a difference in the disputes that arise in the 21st century?
Um, political, like a debate. I don't know, like different parties, different groups.
So, okay, so think more so about our main idea because I think you still are kind of having a hard time understanding like the main idea here. So let's talk about that a bit. So what tell me about our main idea.
The main idea is that it's harder to have a leader that like controls big groups.
I
Um,
thought it was easier for that.
Easier, but it's harder for large groups to like have direct discussion because of the number of participants. Um,
Yeah.
I don't understand like can direct democracy exist with a leader there as well? No, no, right?
Well, so okay. So we talked about how large groups can be easier to dominate by a charismatic leader. That's one. Now, has that like would you imagine that to really change, prior like compared to the 21st century compared to prior to the 21st century?
That larger groups are easier to dominate by.
Huh? Yep.
Maybe it's harder in the
Well,
past.
what would make it harder in the past?
Well, like no, it's harder now,
What would
easier in the past. What make it harder now? Um, like so I don't know. There's social media. Uh, I don't know.
okay. So there's nothing that so for the argument that larger groups are easier to dominate by a charismatic leader, there shouldn't really be much of a difference in that prior to the 21st century compared to the 21st century, right? Okay. What's our other argument?
that it's larger direct democracy. It's impossible.
Why is it impossible?
There's a lot of people.
Okay. So what makes that impossible?
There's just um a lot of people that it's so hard because of like um the room and distance.
Okay. Now
Um,
that change between,
sure, yeah.
tell me how?
Zoom.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So yeah. So I think that you want to have a really close understanding of that main idea, which is two kind of arguments here, right? And
Hmm.
they're talking about if they're asking you, like, what statement from the passage indicates that it was written prior to the 21st century, you want to think, okay, is this something that changed, that can change prior to the 21st century compared to now, right? So when you said, large groups being easier to dominate, harder to dominate, nothing really changed, in the 21st century. And I think, not to bring in outside info, but like Donald Trump, I think is a good example of that because that happened. We had a large group influenced by a charismatic leader in the 21st century. There's nothing in the 20th century that would make that, less so, make that happen less so or more so.
Right.
Yeah. The issue with the direct democracy is that it's not logistically possible because they're saying in order for us to get, some type of consensus in a large group of 10,000 people or greater, the issue is there's no way to solve the issue of distance by bringing them together and solve the issue of room by finding a room big enough for them to be in. And then also an issue of the orator, if there's so many people, like the orator is not going to be able to be heard because it's just so many people.
Hmm.
But yes, when I was reading this, I was thinking Zoom, right? Because that's a way for us to fix the issue of the room because you can have like, really, really large, probably not 10K, but you can greatly solve the issue of there being not enough room or there being, too far away from each other, the distance aspect, and the orator being hurt. That can all be solved, right? So that's what we want to look for here. Okay. And also,
Yeah.
yeah. And also when you read, you want to read actively and kind of, it'll take practice, but start to think about these things as you read.
Mhm.
So, okay. Now, what type of answer are we going to look for?
Something that says Zoom in it. No, I'm joking. Something that uh I mean it has to do with like the second half of the main idea, which is like large direct democracy is impossible because of whatever reason.
Because of the logistics.
Yeah.
Okay.
The regular holding of deliberative assemblies of 1,000 members encounters the gravest difficulties in respect of room and distance. Okay. B, keep A always. B, the crowd is readily influenced by the eloquence of popular orators. So
So when you
I would,
sorry, so when you said keep A always, sure, but you also want to try to like kill it. So what do you think about A as an answer choice?
yeah, I mean the way they always do is that no matter what, keep A because first you want to read B and then you compare them. So
Well,
between, mhm.
like you read A, evaluate it and
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
see if it's good or bad. I mean, if it's bad, you still keep it just because you haven't seen anything else yet.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean.
But on its own, A, is that something that we're looking for or
I
no?
think it's good, yeah, because I mean it talks about the logistics. So
All right, now yeah, you can look at B.
B is it talks about the first half of the main idea, I feel like. So that's why it'd be probably wrong. It'd be more wrong than A.
What?
So
Why? What? Tell me your reason for it.
it talks about being readily influenced by the eloquence of popular orators. So like basically it talks about like the charismatic leader
Okay. And what?
influencing the crowd.
Okay. And what about it?
Um, this this pertains more to the first half of the main idea.
Well, but you know, tell me about if this is a good answer or not.
No, because there have been like many many people that have influenced the crowd, like charismatic leaders, also in the 21st century.
Okay. So yeah, so that's what I was looking for. So so the crowd being readily influenced by the eloquence of popular orators, is that something that like changed from the 20th century to the 21st century? It hasn't really, right?
Yeah, it has.
Okay.
So I'd eliminate B. C, the same assemblies have divided into small sections, which would be much more guarded in their assent. Um, okay. So,
Sorry, I just have to use the bathroom. I'll be right back.
okay.
Okay.
Hmm.
So you're on C.
Yeah. So these same assemblies, if divided into small sections, will be much more guarded in their ascent. Um, well, I don't think it, I think it's a little out of scope of this question, um, compared to A.
Well, I mean, I don't know, like, because these are like statements from the passage, so I don't think it'll any of these will be out of scope. But what we're thinking for this question, right? We're thinking, is this some, so think about it like before in the 20th century, and then think about it in the 21st century, and if it's changing or not,
Mhm.
right? So, so C is saying, what is C saying?
That the groups are less likely to just agree.
When you say the groups, what groups?
Smaller groups of people.
So, smaller groups of people are, going to be more guarded in their assent. Is that something that would change in the 21st century?
No.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, C is out, and D, the sovereign master incapable of undertaking the most necessary resolutions. Probably wouldn't change either, I guess.
Okay.
So it's A.
Yep. That's the only thing that would change, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But this is such a like broad question. It's crazy. I don't know. I feel like you really got to think for this. Like I just very surface level sort of question.
Surface level?
Like the question, I don't know. It's just that could mean so many different things, I feel like, prior to the 21st century.
Uh-huh. So, hmm. Yeah. So you take a look at this again. We could see that here, even if we imagine the means of communication to become much better than those that now exist, right? How can it be possible that we can assemble all these people at a given place, right?
Hmm.
So, out of everything that's being talked about, the only thing that can, that, so they're really just asking you, okay, how can you tell that this was written prior to the 21st century, right?
Okay.
Out of everything that is said, the only thing would be this stuff here. Because we know, like with Zoom, with the internet, right? The internet lets you connect people from like uh any distance. So the distance part is handled. The room part is handled. You don't need a physical location to fit all the people in if you do it by, Zoom or internet. And then the out orators making themselves heard because they're saying that it's a physiological impossibility, meaning if you gather 10,000 people in a room, how can the orator, the speaker, be heard if there's that many people,
Yeah.
right? So you can tell that this was written prior to whatever, the 21st century, because we do have a way to solve those issues in that second to last paragraph with technology today. So this question is
Right.
asking you, what statement from the passage indicates that this was written prior to the 21st century? And so you want to look at what's a clue or what's something that's said in the passage that clues you in on the fact that this was written, before, let's say, the advent of like, easy internet and stuff. So you're really looking at, okay, what's different in the 20th century and compared to the 21st century as you go through these choices. But also, when you're reading it, you want to kind of, read actively and kind of think about these things as you read it.
Okay.
Okay.
Which of the following assertions in the passage does the author support with a practical example? Okay. Direct government by the people greatly facilitates sudden insurrection of all kinds by individuals who are exceptionally bold, energetic, and adroit.
So let's think about what this question's asking.
Yeah, which of the following does the author support with like an example that is like um can be applied to real life?
You said applied. Uh,
Like practical is, I guess, um easy to understand.
so this is a question that's asking, and this is a common type of question. It's asking which argument is has support, like a practical example as support. And this is a common type of question where they'll ask you, that's why I always say you want to be aware of what the argument is, who's making the argument, and what support, if any. So, which of these arguments has a practical example um, as support?
I would just rush into the article and look, try to find all the sentences and see if there's a support that follows.
Yeah, but that's going to be the opposite, the like I don't know if I said this to you, but that's what most people do. People, and I think you're having that issue here because you want to, so what you don't want to do is zoom through the passage, not really understanding it, zoom through the question stem, not really understanding it, and then play mix and match with finding words in the passage that match words in the choices. That's what most people do in cars, and that's what leads you to the trap answer choices. What you want to do is you want to read the passage slowly and understand it so well that you don't need to go back to the passage. Okay? So going back like it is not gonna work here. Um because you at least want to understand what the question's asking first.
Mhm.
So yeah. And they even say that in Jack Weston. They say don't reread the passage, right?
Yeah, no, yeah.
So um okay, let's try this question.
Which of the following assertions of the passage does the author support with a practical example? A, direct government by the people greatly facilitates sudden insurrections of all kinds by individuals who are exceptionally bold, energetic, and adroit.
Now,
Uh,
did we have a practical example for that?
hmm. Um,
What passage? I mean, what paragraph is
I
this?
think A. I mean one.
Okay. And did we have a practical example there?
Don't think so.
Yeah.
B, and there with disappears also personality and a sense of responsibility.
All right. What paragraph is that?
Uh, 3.
Three, you said?
Think so.
Do we have
No.
Okay.
I think my prediction is it's going to be something like the Paul and Peter thing.
Okay.
So, see, the adhesion of the crowd is tumultuous, summary, and unconditional. I think that's paragraph two. Probably not.
Okay.
Yeah, it is impossible for the collectivity to undertake direct settlement of all controversies that may arise. Um, that was like the last paragraph,
Okay.
and yeah, that had Peter and Paul in it.
Yeah. And now, when you look at this, remember, well, I don't know if you remember, but the new ideas I highlight in green,
Yeah.
and the evidence or examples I highlight in orange. Okay.
Mhm.
And I also include in the map. So in the map, you can see, like, i.e., Peter wrongs Paul. For instance, if we read the first choice, that corresponds to paragraph one. I didn't write in paragraph one, an example, right?
Mhm.
Because if there was one, I would have written it, but since there isn't, I didn't write it, right?
Yeah.
Paragraph two, no example. Paragraph three, I highlighted in orange, 50 and 50 people to get an idea of how many, what they mean by 50 people, sorry, what they mean by small. But still, I didn't put, an example or anything like that. Paragraph four, no example. Paragraph five, I put in the 10,000 to get an idea of what they mean by large group, right? And then we kind of talked about like perhaps, you know, I wouldn't say examples, but like ways that the logistics can't work, like room, distance, orator being heard. But yeah, the only place where I put that is in paragraph six. And so if you wrote that in the map properly, which means you write down the argument, who's making the argument, and your evidence, like your support, right? Then you don't need to go back to the passage and you can just look through your map and see, okay, which argument has an example, a practical example, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I think you want to, like, make sure you understand what the question's asking. Okay.
Yeah. Suppose the author were asked to advise a newly independent nation about the form of government it should establish. Based on the passage, the author would probably recommend. Okay, what would the author basically it's a main idea question and it's asking what the author would recommend in terms of a government. Like, yeah. A monarchy in which decisions are made by one supreme leader. Um, don't like it.
Why?
Because we're talking about an oligarchy in terms of like either oligarchy or direct democracy. Like this was never mentioned. The monarchy was never mentioned.
But does it need to be mentioned for us to so wait, so you're saying you said something like about direct democracy oligarchy?
Those were brought up, but never monarchy.
Now, be careful with eliminating choices because they so-called weren't mentioned. That's another pitfall that people have with cars. A lot of times they'll say, this can't be the answer because it wasn't talked about, and this can be an answer because it was talked about. But make sure we understand what the question's asking. What is it asking?
The author would advise, he'd probably recommend. So
Okay.
something like imply that he recommends
So,
or an inference.
well, now my question to you is, would the author probably recommend, like, if you are just looking for oligarchy or direct democracy, like, tell me tell me about that.
Um, like,
Or let's do it one by one. So, oligarchy. How would the author feel about that?
um, he would like it, but it comes with a couple pitfalls.
Um, what makes you think you would like it?
That, well, paragraph one,
Paragraph one, what in paragraph one makes you think
he
that?
said, ideal democratic government by masses can be oligarchy.
Uh-huh. Yeah, but that's a drawback, isn't it?
Hmm. Okay.
Meaning in an ideal situation, you should have an ideal democratic situation, you should have government by the masses, but there's an influence there by oligarchs, which can lead to insurrection. Do you think the author thinks insurrection is good?
No,
So,
no.
so the author, do you think the author thinks an oligarch would be good?
I guess no sense it leads to insurrection.
Yeah, right. And if we take another look at this, because maybe what I put in the map wasn't as clear, but we're saying the ideal of democracy is self-government of the masses, but, right, it can still, it fails to provide a guarantee against the formation of an oligarchical rule. So we have an ideal democracy, which is great, right? But it doesn't mean that an oligarch can't take control.
Okay.
Okay. So
Yeah.
we're not saying that the ideal democracy is an oligarch taking control. We're saying that an ideal democracy, unfortunately, falls prey to an oligarch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what about a direct democracy?
Um, direct democracy. There's some sort of impotence being discussed of a direct democracy.
Okay. So, you know, the
I'm not sure if you really recommend it.
okay.
Don't think you would
You don't think you would. Why?
because of large groups.
What about large groups, though?
The number leads to an impotence of the direct democracy.
And why?
Because logistically it's
Okay.
not possible.
Yeah. So you see why I asked you why, right? Because large groups could be bad for two reasons here, right? Large groups can be bad because they're easier to dominate
Uh-huh.
by a leader. And they're also bad because it makes it logistically impossible to get like an actual, vote on something, right? So we want to know like the whys as well. So
Okay.
okay, so we know that he's not gonna recommend an oligarchy, and he's likely not gonna recommend a direct democracy, right?
Hmm.
So right away, we're gonna look for an answer that isn't explicitly stated in the passage, right?
Okay.
Right? Because what is explicitly stated in the passage, an oligarchy, he's not into. Direct democracy, he thinks has, these types of flaws that make it impossible, right?
Hmm.
So be careful with, you know, um, eliminating choices because they weren't mentioned, and be careful with choosing choices just because they were mentioned. So let's try this again.
A monarchy in which decisions are made by one supreme leader. Representative democracy in which decisions are made by a limited number of elected representatives. Um, I would still remove A
Okay.
because like one supreme leader, I don't know. I feel like it's a little too extreme in terms of his argument.
Uh-huh.
Um, he said oligarchy is like not that good. So
Right.
monarchy is even more extreme than oligarchy. It's one person.
Good.
I'd probably move A. So C, a direct democracy in which decisions are made by all adults in the country. Um, versus B. I mean, I already looked at B. Um, so I removed C because you said direct democracy. It's not good because of like number. And then D, oligarchy also said was
So when you say not good because of number, what do you mean? Because
because of the number of the individuals in the group,
yeah,
and that leads to mechanical, technical impossibilities.
okay. So yeah, so I asked you that because when you said because of the number, there's two bad things about the number, right? One, they're more
Hmm.
subject to domination. Two, logistics are impossible, right?
Yeah.
So, so okay. We know it's on oligarchy, and we can extend that logic to say it wouldn't be a monarchy because if he's against a few, he's certainly going to be against one.
Yeah.
All right. Now, the direct democracy, he seems to not really be opposed to it, but he says that it's logistically impossible. So it won't be C, but he's only against direct democracy because that number of people makes it logistically impossible, but he's not against it, in theory, right?
Hmm.
So maybe if you had instead of a direct democracy in which you have to make decisions by all of the adults, that's too many people, right? You're going to have that issue with logistics.
Yeah.
Whereas representative democracy is still a democracy, but you solve the issue of the numbers causing logistical impossibility,
Right.
right? So, so yeah, so so because when you first were reading this, you were saying it's going to be either direct democracy or oligarchy, but now you see that it's not that, and that you can't use the logic of it wasn't mentioned in the passage. Okay.
Hmm.
So does that one make sense why it's representative?
I mean, we eliminated all the answer choices.
Well, but it should make sense even without that.
I mean, what, it's like a mix of oligarchy and direct democracy.
No, no, no. So, okay. So we know that this guy doesn't like it when it's, a small group. He doesn't like the oligarchy because it's led by a small group, right?
Yeah.
He shouldn't like the monarchy because that's even more so of an oligarchy,
Hmm.
one person. He does like democracy, except a direct democracy in which you ask literally everyone is just logistically impossible. So,
Right.
how do you get a democracy without all of the people? Well, you can have a representative democracy in which you still have the democracy, there's still votes, but instead of each like law requiring every single adult in the country to vote for it, you elect people that will vote on those things.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay. Consider that some groups are defined as cults. Members of these extremist sects generally live communally and obey an authoritarian, charismatic leader. Assume that all cults have fewer than 100 members. This information would tend to weaken the past assertions about the.
Okay, what is this asking us?
What would weaken the passage assertions? I mean, it talks about cults. Passage basically said it's easier for charismatic, authoritarian leaders to control large groups. Here it's saying that it's an authoritarian leader that is controlling a small group.
Okay.
It's going against the past assertion that it's easier to dominate large crowds than small ones.
Good.
A, ability of great orders to sway large groups. B, loss of personality, sense of responsibility. Um, I don't like B. I think it's more wrong. A, yeah, that's what I was saying. The ability of leaders to sway large groups.
So
C,
tell me more, right? So what did you say about A?
A is the ability of great orders to sway large groups. The argument was that orators are it's easier for them to sway large groups compared to small ones. That this is being weakened because we see that they're cults. These small groups are being swayed by charismatic orators.
Okay. What about B?
Passage assertions about loss of personality and sense of responsibility. That's just that was an idea in like one paragraph.
Okay. But
This is a main idea question, and I don't think, there being smaller groups being controlled by a larger leader, like it doesn't correlate. I mean, it doesn't connect as much to B.
so B is saying something about loss of personality and sense of responsibility. Now, you said that that was in which paragraph?
Great.
All right. And what did we say about that?
Small groups are more, or no, in a crowd, a big group, there's less personality, sense of responsibility.
Okay. So that's talking about the large group, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
C, difficulties involved in convening large assemblies. I mean, that was an idea, but this isn't talking about difficulties in bringing together large groups. So
You said it was an idea, like what
it
idea?
was the second idea, second main idea, like
The logistics, right?
logistics, yeah, room distance and zoom. Um, and then the responsible reasonable reasonableness
Hmm.
of small groups compared to large groups. Okay, so um so might be I guess referring to like the ascent stuff, like
Okay.
small groups are more guarded in their ascent, but like once again, I think what this is talking about, the question is like when you have a smaller group, it's harder to get swayed by the leader.
Okay.
It's easier to dominate a large group than a small one.
Okay.
So I pick A,
So, um, so the question stem is saying what?
like weakening it.
So sorry. So like before that?
Okay, it says that a smaller group
Hmm.
is being swayed by
Hmm.
um a leader. So
So what would that weaken?
That would weaken the idea that larger groups are the ones that are swayed easier. For me, it would be between A and D. Like I would remove B and C.
Okay.
Um, but then it'd be between A and D. But A talks about orders,
Okay.
while D it's I mean D's talking about the reasonableness of small groups. So I guess reasonableness, like I don't know what that fully means, but maybe like connects to the assent thing, like being guarding your assent.
So the passage said, what about small groups?
That they're more guarded in their assent.
Meaning?
Like they disagree more.
What, so like, and the, tell me what that means. Like,
It's like harder for them to I guess agree with like the leader.
okay, all right. So now if the question stem is saying, like, suppose that it's true, it's true that for this, for cults to be, to obey this charismatic leader, what would that weaken? And so you're between A and D, right?
Hmm.
Now, so it's saying that small groups can be subject to influence by a charismatic leader, right?
Yeah.
So does that mean that charismatic leaders can't influence large groups?
Maybe it doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So it'd be D, I guess.
Yep. Because the author said that smaller groups are more guarded in their assent, right? They're less, and in paragraph two, smaller groups are harder to dominate, right? So if we find out that the smaller group here is easy to dominate, it doesn't mean that large groups suddenly become harder to dominate, right? It just means that small groups are also easier to dominate or easy to dominate.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, next. I just kind of gotta go soon because I have class.
Yep. Sure, sure.
When using the term the sovereignty of the masses, paragraph 4, the author seems to mean the ability of the masses to. So this is a structured question because it refers to one paragraph, and um, yeah, he's basically. Oh, I had great difficulty with this question. Got it twice, wrong twice, I think, both times I tried this, but um, yeah, the other. Basically, it's asking what the term means, sovereignty of the masses in paragraph 4.
Yeah,
Um, and we said it's like sovereignty of the masses is technically or mechanically impossible due to the number.
yeah.
So A, vote in elections that decide who their leaders will be. B, make every decision concerning their governance. Um, so um, yeah, I mean, I had no idea. Like, I was between A and B all the time, I think. Um, the whole time, but um, I would remove A.
Okay.
C, discuss all the potential consequences of specific actions. I mean, it's just so broad, but like, That's why I just yeah, I had no clue here. Make every decision concerning the governance. So I was saying it's mechanically technically impossible due to the number. But like not really sure what exactly that has to do with this.
So so I put that in, so they mentioned sovereignty of the masses, and I put that as rule by the masses because that's what that would mean. So what would be closest to rule by the masses?
Like I feel like B and C are both talking about ruling. Like
Well, one's talking about making every decision concerning the way that they're governed, and C is saying all the potential consequences of specific actions, but it doesn't say anything about ruling or, you know,
well, I don't know C then. I don't know.
that you would what see?
I would probably remove it.
All right, good. So could be B, right?
Yeah, I don't know, for some reason I remember being C as that answer and I was like looking through this.
Huh?
But I don't remember. That's why I'm a little biased with question five right now.
Sure.
I know it's not D because like that's like out of scope.
Okay.
But between A, B, and C,
Mhm.
it was like tough.
Yep,
So
got it. So yeah, um, sovereignty of the masses, right? The sovereign masses are incapable of undertaking the most necessary resolutions. And the resolutions, I think you initially thought of as like a conflict kind of thing, but it's really like just being able to agree on some, I mean, I think of it as some type of law or something that, and the issue with that is that you can't ask everybody, right? And the sovereignty of the masses means their ability to rule themselves, right? So the vote in elections that decide who their leaders will be is more like that representative democracy. Um, C, potential consequences of specific actions. Like that's a little overly specific to something that is really just talking about the rule of the masses. So yeah, it's B. Making it, every decision concerning their governance. So
okay, good.
yeah. So no, yeah. So I know you have to go, but I think that
Can we quickly look over the map? I don't want to forget that though.
uh-huh.
You think what?
Yeah, you could show me your map. But yeah, so that first paragraph you wrote democracy, leaders, no power, but that's very different from what we wrote, which is that an ideal democratic government would be ruled by the masses, but it could be the case that masses are influenced by a charismatic leader. So that's like almost the opposite of what you wrote of leaders no power. And then paragraph two, the dominate large crowd greater than small.
Like, easier.
Yep. So that's good. Um, as long as you because like if you wrote before leaders no power, um, and then paragraph two you're saying dominate, like I don't know if you like, it would be right if you were saying thinking of dominating by a leader. But if you said leaders no power before, I don't know here what you mean by dominate. Paragraph three, I just see like an arrow. that
Same idea in paragraph three compared to two.
yeah, I mean, paragraph three, we kind of talk more so about how the smaller group is more guarded and more there's more deliberation, and that the pathology of the crowd is something that happens. That's pretty important to write down, especially because they asked us questions about it. So yeah, I think you missed that for paragraph three. And then paragraph four, direct democracy, bad, indirect, good. Um, that's also very different from what we wrote. We wrote that the best argument against this direct democracy is that it's logistically impossible. So I think that's off too. And then paragraph five, large crowd, hard to get point across. We wrote large crowd, we have logistical issues essentially. Um, so that's different as well. Paragraph six, modern democracy, crowd can't read conclusion. Um, we wrote paragraph six that there's also administrative issues, and then we have the example of Peter wrongs Paul, and that it's impossible for everyone to directly settle all disputes. So I think that, um, yeah, I think you definitely need more work on understanding what a passage is saying. Um, so yeah, I would say also to like probably like I don't know if you did a blind review for this or not.
Mhm.
Like, did you or no?
Yeah.
Um, when you did your blind review, did you make like another map for it or?
No, like, because the thing is, when I this with this passage, since I did it a second time, this was like me doing it a second time. So I just like I don't know, I read through and I tried using this map. I guess I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, because well, it's okay. Like I would understand that you would write a map like this when you took the practice test because you're on the time crunch, but if you then did your blind review when you don't have the time constraint, it would make sense to write another map for it. But yeah, I would say that, yeah, I think you missed a lot here, in terms of like what this passage was about.
Definitely.
And I think a lot of like for a lot of what we read, you were kind of saying like, I don't know, and kind of stuff like that. So yeah, I would really, really, um, yeah, I would really, really kind of see if you could like for your blind review for the rest of any of this stuff, just to yeah, slow down and write that map again because yeah, I think you missed most of what this. I don't really see a main idea here either.
Yeah, the main idea was I mean I got it wrong that large crowds are hard to control and they can't agree. That's why it's easier to dominate them.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean that's part of it with them being easier to be dominated, but if they're harder to control, how could they be easier to dominate, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think yeah, take a closer look at the map that we wrote, like that you took a screenshot of, and as you continue to do cars, like kind of, look at the difference, I guess, between our map and your map here. And yeah, I would say definitely need some work on this.
Yeah. Okay, wait, hold on. I take one more screenshot. Okay.
Got it?
Yeah.
All right then. So I'm seeing you again on Thursday.
Yeah, and would I be able to like pay you however much the session was on Thursday, by
Yep,
any chance?
that's
Like
fine.
together with Thursday then?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So how much was it for the whole session?
175.
All right. Oh wait, because we started at 120, but you include that, right?
Yeah,
Like, okay.
session's 2 hours, 20.
Yeah. Okay. 175, you said? All right. I will see you then. I have to go to class.
All right, take care. See ya.